The news of Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Arakawa passing away at their Santa Fe, New Mexico, home has shocked the world. Gene Hackman, a Hollywood legend with iconic roles beloved by many, endured heartbreaking abandonment by those closest to him in ways few could imagine. His father, a violent man, walked Hackman never allowed the pain to overcome him. He lived with strength, passion, and an unwavering determination to fight back against life no matter his age. His story is not just about the loss of a star, but also the final chapter of a life filled with trials, resilience, and an unspoken goodbye to his family. His mother died before she could see her son's success on the big screen, and his best friend Norman Gary died of despair and suicide. Indomitable spirit. Are you prepared to hear the story of a man who was abandoned, but persevered in his fight against a Hollywood legend? Gene Hackman left behind an unresolved tragedy when he and his wife Betsy Arakawa passed away at their Santa Fe, New Mexico, home. The news of their deaths shocked the public and sparked a number of perplexing questions. On that fateful day, a worried neighbor called the police after noticing that the couple had been missing for a long time. When the authorities arrived, they found that Hackman and Betsy had died in separate rooms. One of their 3 dogs was also discovered dead, while the other 2 were still alive. The scene sent shivers down many people's spines, because no one had anticipated a seemingly peaceful life to end in such eerie solitude. What really unnerved the public was the response of one of Gene's 3 children, Leslie Ann Hackman, 58, who told the press that the family was still awaiting official findings regarding the couple's passing. Leslie and her sister Elizabeth Jean Hackman speculated that their father and stepmother might have died from carbon monoxide poisoning due to a possible gas leak, but investigators found no evidence of such a leak. Instead, the official report stated that Gene Hackman and his wife had probably died days earlier because their bodies showed signs of decomposition. Leslie added that her father had not shown any signs of health problems before his death, despite the fact that he was elderly. He was in excellent shape, she disclosed, adding that he had not had any significant surgeries in recent months, enjoyed Pilates yoga, and continued to work out multiple times a week. What was even more shocking was that, despite the world's shock over the death of the renowned Gene Hackman, his wife Leslie acknowledged that she was not overly shocked, because her father was already 95 years old and lived in California. She had not seen or heard from her father, who lived a reclusive life for months. The Daily Mail reported that on February 27th, Leslie and her sister were seen dining together at a Denny's restaurant in Burbank, California, looking calm and happy. The pictures were taken almost a day after they learned of their father and stepmother's deaths. "We're very close. I hadn't spoken to them in a few months, but everything was normal and fine," she shared. As of right now, Leslie hasn't been to New Mexico, and said she wouldn't until the police finished their investigation. Hackman's grandson, Tim Hackman, also spoke out. He disclosed that Leslie was the only family member who stayed in touch with Gene Hackman, even though they only spoke every few months. Tim also shared that the last time he saw Gene Hackman was 11 years ago, at his father's funeral. It turns out that in his final years, Gene Hackman chose or was fated to live a Leslie, sold the exclusive story to the Daily Mail, a tabloid known for paying sources to exploit sensational news. This has led the public to wonder if she was genuinely grieving her father's passing, or if she was taking advantage of the tragedy for attention. Life of isolation detached from his family and closest connections. The question that still lingers is whether this solitude was his own choice, or if fate forced it upon him. Was breaking. Hackman was no ordinary man. He was born into adversity, lived with an unbreakable spirit, and never allowed himself to be defeated. However, in a cruel twist of fate, at the end of his journey, he passed away in silence, with no loved ones by his side. After leaving Hollywood in 2004, Hackman and Betsy chose to live quietly in Santa Fe, New Mexico, far away from the cacophony of the entertainment industry. There were no flashing cameras or extravagant parties, just an elderly man looking for a little peace in his final years. It wasn't the kind of peace he had hoped for. He was last seen in 2023, eating with Betsy at a nearby restaurant. The picture showed an elderly man who was frail, but still exuded the aura of a warrior who had fought through adversity. There were no pictures of children gathered by his bedside, or family members crying in grief. The man had once been strong, but when he took his last breath, no one was there to witness it. The people who were most important to him abandoned him, while others pushed him away. Gene Hackman's death was not just the end of a Hollywood legend, was the ultimate testament to the profound loneliness of a man who had lost too much in life. Did fate choose him, or did he choose this fate himself? Gene Hackman grew up in a chaotic home, without warmth or stability. His father, Eugene Ezra Hackman, worked in the newspaper printing industry, but his unstable job forced the family to move frequently. His relationship with Hackman was strained because his father was a strict man who frequently resorted to. When Hackman was just 13 years old, a life-altering event shattered his world when his father abruptly left the family without saying anything. Hackman was playing with friends at the end of the street when he saw his father drive by and wave. That was the last time Hackman ever saw him, and that moment haunted him. The actor's studio, Hackman spent the remainder of his life. When James Lipton asked him about that memory, he couldn't contain his emotions and admitted that it was a difficult one. He said, "I was at the end of the street playing with some guys, and he drove by and waved." When Lipton suggested that maybe he had seen his father again, Hackman just nodded silently, holding back tears. The man who had taught him discipline and violence, and who, despite his harshness, was still his only source of support. Disappeared Hackman and his brother were left to live with their mother in their grandmother's home in Danville, Illinois, but rather than receiving affection from family, Hackman experienced emotional neglect and cold indifference from his grandmother, who never really accepted him. These experiences not only made Gene Hackman strong and resilient, but they also sowed the seeds of rebellion and a lifelong sense of abandonment. Hackman was haunted by the fact that his mother was the only member of his family who saw his potential and encouraged him to pursue acting. She assured him that he could become a talented performer, but that love was insufficient to erase the emotional distance and coldness within their family, especially since his mother battled alcoholism and life's hardships. In 1962, tragedy struck when Hackman's mother died in a devastating house fire. In addition to the loss of his mother, Hackman also experienced the unfathomable grief of knowing that she would never see the success he had worked so hard to achieve. The one person who had believed in him was gone, unable to see her son become a star and reach the heights she had once hoped for him. The fire started after she fell asleep with a lit cigarette in her hand while intoxicated, swiftly engulfing the house in flames. If he could pick one movie for his mother to watch, it would be I Never Sang for My Father, a tale of loss in which Hackman portrayed Gene Garrison, a son grappling with a difficult relationship with his aging father, desperately seeking love and acceptance. The film was a journey of exploring emotional. To better understand the hidden depths of Gene Hackman's turbulent life, you can find the following. I Never Sang for My Father on streaming platforms like Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, Hulu, or rental services like Google Play Movies and Apple TV. The anguish of losing his mother, and the deep sorrow of unresolved pain, and an unfulfilled longing for affection, something that was never easy to attain. Deprivation, a yearning for love and acknowledgement, things he had been deprived of throughout his childhood. Hackman's grandmother's cold indifference left him with a deep sense of loneliness and a yearning for love that never materialized. But life did not permit him to focus only on those wounds. In the years that followed, Hackman suffered yet another devastating blow: the unexpected death of his closest friend, Norman Gary. Hackman had found comfort in this friendship because Gary was someone he could trust during trying times. But when Gary decided to take his own life in 1982, Hackman not only lost a close friend, but also faced a painful Norman. Gary was not only a close friend, but also a well-known entertainment lawyer who was highly respected in the film industry. He had played a crucial role in managing Hackman's legal affairs and contract negotiations, and the actor implicitly trusted him because of his dedication and ability to handle difficult situations. Although Gary appeared to have it all, beneath the surface of his professional success, he struggled with money issues that were never fully explained before his untimely death. In addition to his grief, Hackman was continuously troubled by unresolved questions about whether there was anything he could have done to stop the tragedy. Gary's death was more than just a devastating loss. It left a huge hole in Hackman's life and sparked mystery and conjecture about the financial issues that were never revealed, leaving Hackman to live with unresolved questions. For a man who had already experienced so much loss since childhood, seeing loved ones vanish one after another led him to Hackman chose to face his pain by immersing himself in his work, channeling all of his energy into acting and taking on role after role, not to escape his emotions, but to keep himself from being consumed by solitude. Hackman gradually closed off his heart, seeking meaning in his work rather than in personal relationships. But not every loss leads to defeat. It was during these endless years of work that Hackman turned his grief into motivation, delivering some of one might think that after the emotional shock of losing his best friend to suicide, fate would finally give him some respite, but it didn't. The storm of marital discord soon arrived, and Hackman immersed himself in work, filming non-stop while traveling from one set to another with his wife Faye and their kids. The most powerful performances of his career, his unwavering dedication cemented his status in Hollywood, earning him 2 Oscar nominations, and reinforcing his undeniable talent and screen presence. In 1989, Hackman acknowledged that, as an actor, you become extremely selfish and spend your entire life craving recognition. When success finally comes, it's hard to say no. Money, fame, temptation is all too much for a poor kid like me to resist existing. Faye Maltz had waited patiently, but in the end, the distance between them had grown into an unbridgeable chasm in 1986. Gradually became distant figures in his life. His phone calls home became less frequent, and his attendance at family dinners became rare. In an interview with GQ, Hackman said, "I was away from him for too long. I have no advice to give. Was it fate that decided this ending, or was it a choice he made himself?" Either way, the cost of exchanging family for success was too high, and he came to that realization too late with bitterness and regret. Hackman's first marriage ended quietly, after 30 years of marriage, with no arguments or battles, just the lingering regret of a man. Grief. And even though this may not have been his deliberate choice, fate always seemed to work its way to force him into a world of solitude, where, in the end, he was truly alone. Gene Hackman was more than just a Hollywood icon. He was a man who lived with an intensity that extended far beyond the silver screen. One of his greatest passions outside of acting was speed racing, which was more than just a hobby for him. It was a way for him to regain equilibrium in the demanding world of fame. The Sports Car Club of America is a fiercely competitive arena for both amateur and professional racers who share a passion for speed. However, Hackman didn't stop at amateur competitions. He pushed himself into larger events. One of his most memorable milestones was competing in the demanding 24 Hours of Daytona in 1983. There, he didn't just participate. He drove a Toyota for the legendary racer Dan Gurn's team, a privilege few could claim. He even won the Long Beach Grand Prix celebrity race, demonstrating that he wasn't, while competing in the 6-hour endurance race at Sears Point Raceway. Hackman had his share of terrifying moments on the track. He was driving an Audi Quattro, one of the most technologically advanced racing cars of its time, when the brakes locked up, sending the car tumbling mid-race. Fortunately, Hackman was unharmed, but the crash served as a stark reminder that speed always comes with risk. In keeping with his humorous nature, he later in the 1980s and 1990s, Hackman owned a Toyota Celica GT, which he raced in competitions. As time went on, his collection grew to include some of the most exciting and stylish cars available, including the Porsche Panamera, a blend of power and luxury, the Mercedes E-Class, a balance of comfort and class, and the Ford Mustang Shelby, an American icon of speed. He joked that he should have had a stunt double for that moment. As with many great passions, Hackman eventually had to give up racing for the sake of his health. He openly acknowledged that aging had affected his reflexes, and for a sport that required split-second reactions, there was no room for compromise. You had to maintain quick reflexes, and performance in Tesla Model S were a nod to his appreciation of modern technology and the future of automobiles. His collection was not just a display of wealth, it was a statement of passion. Gene Hackman demonstrated that he was not only an actor, but also a fearless competitor who embraced speed and challenge with the same intensity he brought to his films. Hackman once said, "You start thinking about old age and realize you have to take care of yourself more." It was a difficult decision, but it demonstrated his pragmatism. In his love of racing, Hackman demonstrated that he was a man who understood his limits and accepted them with grace. Resilience on the track and in life, but even in his later years, Hackman surprised people with his lifestyle choices. While many Hollywood celebrities collected rare and expensive supercars, Hackman stuck to one vehicle, a Toyota Tundra. It wasn't a flashy supercar, which was a collector's edition, but rather a practical, powerful, and dependable truck. It was a fitting choice for a man who had lived life on his own terms, unpretentious, strong, and never one to fit in. Stationed in Santa Fe, stepping out of his Tundra left many people in awe, not because the truck was particularly remarkable, but rather because it was so incredibly ordinary for a Hollywood star of his stature. However, for Hackman, that was precisely the point, a vehicle that got him where he needed to go. Strong enough to handle any terrain but not overly extravagant to attract attention. It seemed that Hackman had come to understand a simple truth. The value of life is found in peace and contentment rather than expensive possessions. The tundra was more than just a means of transportation. It was a representation of the way of life he had chosen after leaving the limelight. This life was devoid of noise and burdened by the need for grandeur, but it was nevertheless full of quiet strength and unwavering determination. Much like Gene Hackman, who never stopped pushing himself. Even after the stage lights had gone down, he entered the literary world with the same tenacity and inventiveness that had propelled his acting career for almost 20 years. Hackman wrote 5 novels, each of which reflected his profound understanding of human nature and history. From the high seas adventure, Wake of the Pedo Star, to the compelling story of revenge and love and payback at Morning Peak, he demonstrated his skill at creating vivid characters and immersive settings. Notably, Pursuit, a crime thriller, carried echoes of his iconic role in The French Connection, marking a signature style that bridged new generations of readers, with the renowned artist moving from the screen to the page. In a rare interview, Hackman once stated that writing allowed him to maintain artistic freedom to control his own narratives without the constraints of Hollywood's rules, and through every page he continued to inspire, proving that true artistry never truly fades. Hackman used medium as a means of preserving his creative spirit. He didn't write merely to tell stories, rather, he wrote to reflect himself. A man who had faced adversity, understood perseverance, and knew the longing for recognition. Hackman's love of sports gave him a rare sense of tranquility in a life that had always been illuminated by the spotlight. He once revealed his desire to protect his private space to Hackman, saying that painting required no praise or attention, and was simply a moment where he could be entirely himself, detached from the noise of the world and the burdens of being a Hollywood star. Was equally exceptional in a variety of athletic endeavors. He was an ardent supporter of the Jacksonville Jaguars, and regularly went to games to support his team. For Hackman, football was more than just entertainment. It was a way to engage with the community and experience the thrill of the game. Although he is no longer with us, fans will always remember him as the epitome of a true tough guy. One of the most memorable incidents that demonstrated his resilience happened in 2001 when he found himself in a street. Hackman was driving when he unintentionally collided with another car in Hollywood. 2 young men, who were obviously upset, came out and started attacking Hackman, without knowing that he was a 71-year-old former Marine. Hackman was not one to be intimidated, and responded with a punch. The 3 men fought in the middle of a busy street until the police arrived to break up the altercation. No arrests were made, but the incident, Hackman's closest brush with death, may have occurred in 2012, when he was riding a bicycle in Florida without a helmet. News of the accident spread quickly, and fans feared the worst, thinking he might be seriously injured or worse. Against all odds, Hackman survived, suffering only minor injuries, and was released from the hospital the same day those close to him were released. Served as another testament to the fact that even after leaving action films behind, Hackman never lost his fighter instinct in real life. According to Hackman, never stopped riding a bicycle despite his advanced age. However, following the accident, he became more cautious and never rode without a helmet again. Later that year, when he was walking with his wife Betsy in Santa Fe, he physically confronted a homeless man who had verbally harassed her. Reports claimed that Hackman slapped the man in defense of his wife, but there were no charges brought against him, further demonstrating his strong sense of familial loyalty. Recalling his early years, Hackman's toughness was apparent from the beginning. At the age of 16, he lied about his age to enlist in the U.S. Marine Corps, because he was restless and eager to leave a turbulent home life. He saw the military as a way out, but the incident occurred again when he was hit by a car while cycling in the Florida Keys. Despite emergency personnel rushing him to the hospital, he recovered quickly and sustained no long-term injuries. Hackman's role as a radio technician gave him unforgettable experiences. He traveled to different parts of the world, including China during the Mad Dong era, exposing him to unfamiliar landscapes and cultures that broadened his worldview. But it wasn't all adventure in one terrifying incident. The strict environment of the Marines proved to be a challenge for someone as rebellious as Hackman. He frequently clashed with superiors and faced disciplinary action for defying strict rules. After leaving the Marines, Hackman barely survived a severe motorcycle crash that left him with multiple broken bones. Despite realizing that military life was not for him, those years shaped his self-perception and became a crucial chapter in his turbulent journey. His life was filled with hardships, near misses, and ongoing battles, both personal and literal. But Hackman never gave in to adversity. Through the innumerable upheavals of life, Gene Hackman was more than just a gifted actor. He was the epitome of perseverance and the unwavering will to triumph over hardship. Even though he endured great loss and watched loved ones pass away one by one, he never let himself go. Instead, every setback strengthened his resolve and helped him demonstrate his value in the art world. The death of Hackman and his wife Betsy Arakawa on February 26, 2025, not only devastated fans, but also left them wondering how someone so resilient and full of life could leave in such silence. But the legacy he leaves behind, his iconic performances and profoundly moving writings, will endure. He transformed every hardship into a tale worth remembering, and every setback into a step forward, making sure that we remember Gene Hackman as a legend who never gave up. If you like stories like this, please remember to hit like and subscribe, so that you can keep following us on this journey. Click the video on your screen to hear more regarding the amazing tale of Gene Hackman.